Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the nonprofit town hall. It's a collaboration between the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce and the Broomfield Community Foundation. I want to thank our major sponsors for this event. I'll start with our webinar sponsor who brings us this platform, the Broomfield Enterprise. Also, a big shout out to SCL Health, which has a Good Sam Hospital nearby, Sunflower Bank, First Western Trust, BSC Signs, Source Communications, and of course, our partner in all things nonprofit, the Broomfield Community Foundation. I'd also like to introduce our nonprofit committee members, most of who are on the screen at the moment. Kurt Saba is our chair. We also have Bonnie Sandoval, Jim Vanaken, Marianna Williamson, Pete Binkowski, Annie Leesom, and Kim Da Silva. I want to thank all of them. They are the ones who put in hours to bring you this format and this town hall. I'd also like to introduce our moderator, and it will be our host, Lisa Pedersen. Lisa is the founder and principal of Root Purpose Group, specializing in CEO coaching and organizational development. Lisa has over 25 years of organizational leadership, most recently as the CEO of the Humane Society of Boulder Valley, where she developed a nationally recognized leadership team. She has served on local, state, and national nonprofit boards of directors. She has expertise in strategic planning, public speaking, board management, fundraising, advocacy, and business development. Thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this, Lisa.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for the great introduction. And I just want to welcome everyone, and we'll go over some of our goals for today and how we're going to interact with one another. So first of all, just want to say thank you to the Broomfield Chamber for creating this opportunity for us to learn from one another, which is a really big goal of today. This is a chance for us to share what's worked for us as both organizations committed to our community and nonprofits doing the work to elevate the quality of life and access to services that all of our community members vitally need. And so this collaborative spirit that the Chamber is creating with this town hall this morning, I think is just a wonderful example of the work that the Chamber does to strengthen our community. And I'm so honored to be here with all of you today. So thank you to everyone on this committee for all the work you've put into this. And for all of you that are attending, the fact that you're here, I think speaks volumes to your commitment to this community. And again, what we hope to do today is to create some new ways of thinking and to get a better understanding from one another about effective partnerships, collaborations between nonprofits and for-profits. And what does that mean? What does an effective partnership mean? So I really want to invite you to just be open and to listen, to really hear what both the business side perspective is and what the nonprofit side is. Really the chance for us to come from a place of curiosity, to really get to seek to understand how do we create these really collaborative partnerships. So this isn't going to be a pitch session. This isn't a chance for us to say, hey, get involved with me. This is really about just listening and learning from one another and helping us to develop the framework for how do we start these conversations and what is important to have established and how do we evaluate things. So we hope that today you'll walk away with a couple of nuggets that you can put into practice right away to help you, again, create those engagements that are really going to move your work forward, whether you be on the for-profit side or the nonprofit side. So we have kind of three sections that we'll talk through. The first one is going to be defining what is an effective partnership. So what does it mean when we say effective? What are the benefits? What are the things that both the business and the nonprofit, what are the specific goals that you hope to create that really define what an effective partnership is? And then we're going to talk about what are the key components of that. So how do they work? What are the mechanics of it? Like, what are some different ways that we might collaborate? What are the different resources that we might exchange with one another? And then finally, we'll talk about how do we effectively communicate with one another and make sure that there's that constant feedback and partnership, and that it's that we're allowing that customization and evolution of those partnerships. And ultimately, then how do we evaluate it? So if we set out and say, here's our goal, this is why we're coming together as a partnership, then how are we communicating that with one another and tracking, are we having the impact that we hope to have? Again, not only on the individual organizations, but again, back to that community. So that's what we hope to do today. And I want to encourage your participation. And I know in the Zoom world, it's a little bit challenging. So here's how we're going to do it. Everyone, please have your chat up, because that's the box that we're going to be tracking. And I'm going to ask for some examples. So I'm going to ask you to think about if you're a nonprofit and you've been in an effective partnership, or you're a for-profit business and I'm going to be asking you to give us some examples. So when I ask those questions out, if you just want to put your name in, then what we'll do is Pat, our Zoom guru, is going to make you then, he'll bring you up and you'll be able to share. We'll see your face, and then he'll bring it back down. So that's how we're going to do it. And you can also raise your hand. You can put questions in chat. We'll all be kind of monitoring that. And then we have our fantastic panelists here who kind of represent both the nonprofit and the for-profit side that we'll be relying on to help us fill in some of the thoughts and input on these questions that we'll be asking. So with that, I want to start our conversation with how do we, well, first of all, I'd love for you to, in your chat or by raising your hand, how many of you are in a for-profit business? So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so we've got at least 6, 7 businesses. And how many of you now are on the for-profit side? I'm sorry, the nonprofit side. Lots of nonprofits. 20, 21, 22. All right. Excellent. So that gives you kind of a landscape. So we've got, about 6 or 7 for-profits, and we've got a lot of nonprofits that are here to exchange some ideas and learn from one another, which is great. So first question I have for you is, when you think of effective partnership, I just want you to put some things in chat. What comes up for you? What does that mean to you? What are the key goals? What are the benefits that you see when you are creating an effective partnership? And panelists, I would offer you can just jump in with what your observations, what your experience has been. So Bonnie, I would ask you as one that I know has been in many, what are some things? I'm just going to read off some of the comments first. Benefits, both sides, mutual respect, collaborative, not duplicating, organizational integration, excellent communication, finding new ideas to support the community, community reach. Bonnie, what's coming up for you? What does effective mean?
So I think it starts, for me anyway, it starts in something you've helped me with, and that's having some clarity of mission from both the for-profit side and nonprofit side. So for me, it's understanding those nonprofits that I'm involved with, it's understanding and being clear about what their mission is and how I can help.
Fantastic. How about from some of the other businesses? Would love to get a couple other business folks. I'm just going to read through here. I've got, again, shared mission, approachable, working together in cooperation, sharing the work processes to achieve a goal. Love that one. Mutually beneficial, alignment of values, open communication, clear communication, MOUs, agreed upon deliverables, high access, engagement in programs, engaging employees. Great. Got a vision of what the corporate partner is trying to achieve in the partnership. Love that one. Great list. Great. Excellent. All right. So, Marianna, tell me from the nonprofit, what are some of the key components that you've seen that define effective for you? Because you work with lots of different nonprofits.
Yes, I think what Kurt mentioned right off the bat is the mutually beneficial. And then, of course, as Bonnie said, mission alignment. I think those are the top two. And, you know, communicating back and forth with the partner and make sure that the corporate partner is seeing what those deliverables are, whether it's their priorities are, you know, through signage and special recognition, or outreach to donors, whatever it is, just making sure that's a mutually agreed upon priority. So that's kind of what we see from a lot of our corporate partners and what we hear from a lot of the partner nonprofits.
Great, great. I would love for someone to give us an example. So I'd love one of our nonprofit attendees and one of our for-profit attendees to tell us about a partnership that worked particularly well. So in chat, if you can just say nonprofit, and I'll call on you and we'll promote you. Is there someone that would like to share a partnership that for you really defined effective, that it was something that worked really well? This is your chance to toot your own horn and to share something that worked and that we can all learn from. So, all right, Mary Wilkie has an opportunity. So let's bring her up. And then Dennis Paul was our first volunteer for the for-profit. So Mary, if it's possible for you to bring your video up so we can see your face, but if not, tell us your organization, the partner that you partnered with in the for-profit side, and what made it so effective.
Hi, so I'm Mary Wilkie from Backstory Theater, and I'm sorry, Zoom is not offering me an option to bring my video up at all. So last summer, we partnered with the School of Rock here in Broomfield on a fundraising event. And it was initially just successful just based on, it was really our first foray into working with a for-profit organization directly because of mission alignment and trying to work outside of the box of what can we do beyond signage? What can we do to actually help them engage and grow their participation, hopefully, and what can they do to show that they're supporting our mission. So it provided a live performance opportunity for their students and an ability to show our artistically based students how great attending that school can be. But it also, they donated their time to do that, and they promoted our fundraising event through their website and through their parents who come to see their kids play. And we were able to really integrate it in a nice way so that they actually got to see our students performing a show. And then they also got to see this great rock concert. And then they kind of just got to have a celebration of the arts in this really lovely alignment. And I felt like what made that really strong was that really clear alignment of our mission from the very beginning and really clear understandings of like what we hoped to get out of it, and both groups working to the best of their ability to leverage their networks to try and bring those different audiences together to have a successful event.
I love the thing that you brought up, Mary, which is that idea of aligning your missions, that to understand what each organization, again, on both sides, the impact that you're trying to have and the fact that that was aligned, that your values were aligned, that the missions were this nice hand in glove, I think is a really excellent insight. So thank you for that. I'd love to hear now from Dennis on the for-profit side, if we can make Dennis and I'm trying to see okay, great, Dennis Paul. So Dennis, I'd love for you to share a partnership. Now you're on the for-profit side, who you partnered with as a nonprofit and what for you made it an effective partnership.
Thanks, Lisa. Sam and the Chamber, thanks for putting together this forum. This is absolutely super. So we wear a weird hat because technically Elevations Credit Union is a financial cooperative, and we have 501c6 status, which is of course a membership driven organization. That said, as a co-op, we're only as strong as our weakest member. And then, of course, our members are only as strong as the communities they live in. So I will just make a quick comment on the front side and then give a couple great examples. That list, Lisa, is great. And obviously a lot of for-profits, Bonnie can certainly relate to this. We get a lot of asks, so 40, 50 asks a month. So we actually created a scoring metric that's on a 100-point scale, and with a goal of trying to take the subjectivity out of it and really make it an objective measure. And a lot of the components are in that list that you mentioned. But when we think about all the asks and everything like that, we have very distinct giving areas. So an example is financial literacy. That's a big thing for Elevations. We partner with a little organization in Loveland called Read Aloud Loveland. And all it is, it's a small nonprofit that provides books and reading opportunities for in early childhood development, which is school readiness ages 3 to 5. And we don't do that. We don't fund at a huge level, but it's stunning the impact it makes around their specific mission. So we do a financial commitment, but we also do a volunteer commitment and work with their leadership. We promote them through social media and things like that. But that's just an example of kind of mission alignment and impact you can have on a small organization that's doing really critical work in the community. That's not good work. That's really essential work. But the other one I want to showcase is, of course, Broomfield Community Foundation, Marianna. So we did a really neat partnership with them early in 2020 around the volunteer portal. So when we looked at Broomfield Community Foundation and we scored them out, and this is, of course, goes back beyond 2019, very much in alignment with our goals and objectives around corporate philanthropy, and we launched the portal. And that was a joint project that lifted, just created a ton more opportunity. So it was, when we think about a win-win for an organization, that one was one. And then one last thing I'll say, Lisa, is we have looked at partnerships, nonprofits, and sponsorships a little differently. And I might suggest your audience consider this. This is a pretty dramatic departure. So the traditional wisdom or the conventional wisdom is that the nonprofits out there with the tin cup on the corner, and they need resources. We tried to flip the messaging where instead of Elevation supporting the nonprofit, we look at it as the nonprofit supporting Elevations. So it gives them a very different role in the equation, and it's really designed for us to see the benefit that they bring to us, as opposed to the traditional we write a check to them, and that tends to kind of change the mindset and change the thought process. We did that with Intercambio, which is, of course, an immigrant services organization in Boulder County. And I really wanted Lee Shanus we talked a lot about this, and I really wanted to position it where they were supporting Elevations as opposed to the other way around, just to try to give them a little more I don't want to say credibility, but more importance in the equation. So that's quite a bit, but I appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Great, Dennis. I love some of the things that you brought up. I mean, not only did you talk about that alignment piece, you're really clear in what the impact that you wanted to have with those nonprofits that you were partnering with. And then that shift that you just mentioned, that we really think about, like, this is a partnership. And I think one of the things that I know about nonprofits, and I think sometimes they get, you're just out there, like you said, that tin cup. These are businesses in themselves, right? So creating those win-wins is really essential. And so when we can have that shift, just in the way you said that, if we think about it from the nonprofit perspective, okay, how am I supporting my business partner? And then ultimately that win-win will come back, right? It's this circle. So I love the way you're thinking about that. And I think it's just a nice filter in which for us to consider those benefits. And I'm curious, so I'd love to hear from some other for-profits. When you think about the benefits of a partnership, either in chat or for those of us that are on the panel, Bonnie and others that are in the for-profit world, what are things that you consider benefits? So Dennis talked about that impact that we can have, but what are things that when you as a for-profit think about, this is why I want to partner with a nonprofit? What are some of the things that come up for you? So Bonnie, I'd love for you to jump in here.
Sure. Probably at the top of the list is how effective the nonprofit is at supporting the community. Are they, the leadership, is it at the forefront? And I think what that does is it helps the for-profit with essentially the brand awareness that they're looking for in that community. I think it can work both ways, and effectiveness, really truly committed staff members and leadership.
Great. Pete, Sam, Kurt, any other thoughts on, like, in terms of benefits to the for-profits that you all have seen?
I think one of the comments that actually Kim made in the chat room earlier about engaging employees is really quite valid. And I think Dennis kind of referenced that as well, that when you have organizational alignment, not just the alignment of perhaps one or two people, but you have employees engaged. Yeah. One of the major benefits, of course, is satisfaction and just the emotional rewards of making an impact. And I think some of the best partnerships evolve from that cross-organizational engagement, whether it's volunteering, collecting supplies and donations for a nonprofit. All those things help to kind of boost the morale of the for-profit team, of course. Mm-hmm. And also it solicits input for more intentionality, as Bonnie was talking about, clarity of impact. What impact do you want to make in your community, and how to maybe kind of make that a little more laser focused in the future?
Yeah.
I'll agree with that. Oh, sorry. I'll agree with that, Kurt. I've seen a lot of nonprofits, and similar to Elevations, the Chamber is a nonprofit, a 501c6, and it is a tin cup, just who can help us with our mission. But unless the mission of the nonprofit is aligned with the mission of the for-profit in some way, whether that's building the community, whether that's a place for satisfaction for their employees, it's not a good fit, and they'll talk to somebody else. So you really have to be strategic in who you're partnering with.
It's a great point. Pete, any other thoughts you have?
No, Sam stole my thunder. I think that shared vision, if you don't have that at the outset, you're already running into a pretty strong headwind, and it just makes that alignment and the engagement really, really challenging right from the start. So just have that thoughtful conversation at the outset, make sure there is aligned strategy and visions, and then start doing the heavy lifting and start moving the partnership forward. But if you don't have it at the outset and you're not honest with each other as you enter into this engagement and this strategy, it can really be challenging.
Yeah, and I think you're all hitting on this theme around when there is alignment in that, the rest of it is so much easier, right? We're not just checking a box. We're actually doing something that moves us forward because we're aligned in our values. There is that engagement. And, one of the things that I've seen in some partnerships is that it's a way to differentiate yourself as a for-profit, right? If it speaks to your values, if you're aligned with nonprofits that are doing work that really speak to your employees, it's a great way. It's a recruiting tool. I've seen some partnerships where I remember at the Humane Society of Boulder Valley, we would actually hold recruitment events for some of the tech companies. They'd come and get to hang out with some cats and dogs and have beer in the library as a way to just say, hey, here's how we differentiate. This is a organization that we really believe in, and if you join our team, this is the kind of impact that you're going to have on that community, which again goes back to if it is aligned in your vision and the impact and how you want to be in the community, then that can be a beautiful way to demonstrate your company values, right? And to get your employees engaged. In the chat, I'm seeing some things like we help organizations develop communication skills, expand empathy, and understand among employees and in the community. Love that, right? So I think one of the things that we're seeing in the world, which I'm a huge proponent of, and maybe it's the way I look at the world, but that we're starting to think of things beyond just our shareholders, that we're thinking about as companies, as for-profits. It's important for us to understand, how do we serve all of our stakeholders, and our employees and the communities in which we are doing our work are a part of that. So these partnerships can really speak to that social investment that I think, again, makes our community stronger, makes us more attractive as for-profit businesses, and again, can lead to ultimately better success on both sides. Another comment is, from the for-profit side, it's important to offer the employees of the for-profit businesses to contribute to the nonprofit. I love that. It's a great comment, Jim. So not only, there's volunteer opportunities, but maybe, the matching opportunities. There's so many creative ways that, again, it's about the benefits we're hearing is, again, a demonstration of your values, right? An impact on your community, employee engagement. These are all fantastic benefits that maybe we wouldn't normally think about, right? It's not just about brand recognition, which of course is important and is a key component, but it's much broader than that. So now I'd love to hear from the nonprofit side and thinking about that benefit question. And Marianna and Kim, I would ask both of you to chime in here. When you think about benefits to your organization or to organizations that you've seen, what are some of the benefits maybe that aren't as obvious? And again, in the chat, for those of you that are nonprofits, what are the key benefits for you when you think about an effective partnership?
Well, I had a couple of thoughts about that, and especially as we're in a new era with the pandemic, and traditionally, a quick and easy way for for-profit organizations to support nonprofits would be through their events. And in the last year and moving forward, that looks very different. So, we've had a lot of for-profits reach out to the foundation and say, hey, do you know any organizations who are looking for skilled volunteers, and not in person these days, obviously. So, call center might be a good example, or, can my staff make donor calls or write thank you notes? And so I just encourage the nonprofits to think about ways that volunteers remote can lend support. And in the past, that's really looked like a table or a sponsorship of an event. But I think getting your foot in the door with employees and their ability to take ownership. I know a lot of the nonprofits on this call already do such an excellent job with, food drives, diaper drives, toy drives. They're doing a great job of that just to be relevant. And so employees can get involved and can take part in it. But now let's think about ways we can take it a step further and think about remote opportunities as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Kim?
And I would say for me, it's making sure that the partnership itself is holistic, that there's so many different components of it, that it speaks to so many different employees or functions of the organization. Because as Marianna kind of pointed out too, it's not all about the money. It's about the engagement. So especially at a time when there's a lot of people and individuals who are struggling, how do they contribute to the organization and really feel like they're making a benefit to the community without having to shell out $5,000? So really thinking past, like, what are some of the opportunities? And a lot of employees, they may work night shifts or they may work at non-traditional hours. So they might not have the opportunity to participate in traditional hour activities like other organizations. So really saying, how can we make sure this benefits the company and the employees of that holistically, as well as the organization? Because you're right, nonprofits also have a lot to bring to the table. And, it is on our responsibility to really sit down and say, how does this partnership really affect what we're doing, our mission? And really, do we want to be seen as hand in hand with this company or this organization? Do they align with our missions? And so I think that it's a lot of conversations have to happen. It's not as cut and dry as we'll put your logo on our website. It'll go out into the community. You send our stuff to the 10,000 individuals that visit your organization. But really, in my mind, having an ability to have a for-profit and nonprofit talk together about an experience that has really brought the community closer is one of the best outcomes that you can have from a partnership.
I love it, because it's not, as you said, it's not just about the money. And what I'm hearing is this strong idea of engagement. And I think that's especially in our current world, when engagement is harder, right? It needs to look different, and we're feeling all that isolation. And so this idea of really having that be, it is, yes. And I think when we think about benefits for nonprofits, of course, resources are really important, and that's a key component of these partnerships. The generosity of our for-profit partners helps us to create our mission. And so that is absolutely a fantastic benefit that not only, it creates that, again, that ability for us to, as nonprofits, to do our mission. And the other thing is, this employee engagement, so that it's not just about those dollars, it's more people being aware of the work that the nonprofit is doing. And that can work both ways. Not only will it allow us to have those volunteer opportunities, as been mentioned, and those different ways that we can get more people supporting the work that we do. The other thing that I know is that oftentimes it is employees in the companies that end up using services from the nonprofits. So creating that awareness that the safety net that nonprofits provide to our community is available to their employees. And as things come up, and whether it's adopting a dog or getting resources around mental health, whatever it might be, there are opportunities for us to have that larger reach. So from the nonprofit side, what I'm hearing are, yes, resources, so whether that be money resources, volunteer resources, active engagement of employees, expansion of our mission and understanding, being able to tell our story. Some of the comments that came in I love are like amplifying. I heard that word, like they become incredible amplifiers of our mission in the community. That's fantastic. Debbie said all of her yard work is being completed by volunteers this year. Can be done outside, right? That's awesome. Helping to combat isolation for seniors, right? So that's another way. We're asking volunteers from local businesses to make videos about their workplace so students can see options in their career journeys. That's so great. We received school supplies from Sunflower Bank, who did a drive at their bank and helped them reduce the school supply purchasing budget by 50%. So these are really fantastic benefits, right? And again, it's not just that traditional, we're coming and asking for money as a nonprofit and a business is just writing us a check. These are much, much more rich and dynamic partnerships that not only create the ability for us to do our mission, but for that to become a ripple for both the company, as we heard, like all the benefits from the company side, and for the nonprofit side. So I love some of the ideas that were coming. I want to explore that a little further. So if we think about what are the components of an effective partnership, and we've already touched on some of those unique opportunities, but what are other nonprofit non-monetary components and things that you all have seen? And we've mentioned a few of them, but I'm just wondering what else is out there, whether it be use of space or that volunteer piece. What are some other things that you've seen in action that are beyond just that traditional sponsorship, brand recognition stuff?
I have one quick example that comes to mind, and this is actually from 6 years ago, and it still stands out in my mind. When I worked for a different organization, and it was a nonprofit, and supporting the local community, and this was so impactful to me, and that's why I bring it up. We made dog toys, the little fabric dog toys as a corporate engagement, employee engagement opportunity. And so we had a big break room, and our staff took a lunch break and spent an hour learning about the local organization and their needs while we made the dog toys. And I immediately decided I want to support this organization. I had no idea they were doing this. And so I think that combination of learning about it, doing something physical stood out with me. And so, you know, as a nonprofit, thinking forward, what are some of those opportunities for a break room with a larger for-profit organization? What are some examples, whether it's, you know, school supply drive, or I know SRB is doing no-sew blankets, so maybe it's something like that. That just really stood out to me. So I thought it would be worth sharing.
That's awesome. Somebody else, Susan, said hosting trainings for community suicide prevention, stress management, and parenting. So as you mentioned, that space piece, and Fred from Imagine said, Imagine uses spaces donated by generous businesses across Boulder to deliver our services. Very valuable and appreciated. Opens the door to the community for interaction for the people that we serve. We had to close the school for a mold issue, and still Terrar let us use their large conference room for staff meetings. Elevations Credit Union offered their space as well. So again, like those non-monetary resources and helping to spread, you know, and right now that's a little bit challenging, but there's other ways that we can do that. I love that idea of like volunteering outside, doing that yard work. What are those different ways that we can engage with one another? Kim, do you have any thoughts on other benefits that you've seen that are kind of outside the monetary ones?
Yeah, you know, for me, when I look at the nonprofit kind of organization as a whole, I take a look and I say, okay, what is really important? But maybe not nonprofits don't put a lot of resources in, because our job is to provide resources to the community. So one of the biggest areas that comes out for me are things like marketing. So many organizations have marketing departments, and how can they partner with local nonprofits to help spread their word? You know, we may not have graphic design artists on staff, social media people on staff, people who can make videos of impact, but many organizations do. So how can you tap into those resources and saying, you know, we don't have $10,000 to spend on a video, but if you were to give us an in-kind donation of creating a video, letting the community know what we did in partnership, that is huge. So really thinking about what areas as nonprofits do you not invest a lot of money in because you don't, you know, you can't, or you just don't have the stretch. It could be leadership training. Are there opportunities to get leadership training for your employees that can really help build a strong environment within your organization? So that's where I really like to start thinking, is where are those areas in which we as nonprofits cannot invest in or don't have the time, resources to do, and how can we have our for-profit partners who are skilled in this come and help us?
Yeah, and what I love is it gives the for-profit that opportunity to do a passion project, right? So, you know, as we're working really hard in our days and having that, the connection to what really lights my fire in my, you know, what am I excited to have impact on? And so whether, like you said, that marketing piece is a great opportunity to, and lots of service providers, service businesses, if it's something that, you know, if there's a cause that they really believe in, to give their employees the chance to work on something that, you know, pro bono, that will benefit that nonprofit, will, you know, give them a chance to be creative in a new way, it can be a fantastic opportunity. So some of the other things, let's see, just looking in our chat, we've got some good ones. Community Food Share started kit building well wishes notes for Elder Share participants, and people have been really excited about the opportunity. And I think, again, what I love, especially right now, is not only is that great for the folks that are receiving those notes, but for those that are writing the notes, is a chance to connect. And that being of service right now, I think, is just, it speaks to some of the things that we're missing in our virtual world. Let's see, think about reversing the rule and having businesses think about volunteer work opportunities for individuals that are receiving services. At Friends, we look for opportunities for adults with disabilities to give back to the community through volunteering or employment as well. That's great. Meaningful connections with new community leaders that may align with our mission. That's a fantastic one, Kaylee. I appreciate that one. because it is about like, how do we connect to folks that have influence in our communities and can help to really elevate our voice in the community and be champions for the nonprofit sector in those really important conversations. So great examples. So and then in the for-profit side, what are some things that are coming up for all of you that of unique things that you've seen work and that you are like, oh, a great example of something that we did with a nonprofit is? I'd love to hear from some of our for-profit friends. So Bonnie and Dennis, I think you mentioned some examples just in the way you shifted that framework, but Bonnie, any immediate thoughts come to mind of benefits?
Well,
I'm sorry,
one that I've written
outside of.
Yeah, one I've written down is that really doesn't cost a whole lot, but can be very effective for both is some social media collaboration as well. I know, at FNB we work closely with the Humane Society on a number of social media kind of programs and to essentially promote events and that relationship between the two. The other thing I would like to make sure gets put into the mix is the collaboration that nonprofits can what they can do together. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be for-profit and nonprofit. Nonprofits tend to have really outstanding leadership, and I think they can be collaborative there as well.
That's a great point, Bonnie. This is about partnerships, whether they be with, it's just getting people together and connecting them. Any other thoughts from the chamber in terms of that other things that you've seen that are outside of the normal just money exchange?
Well, they're talking about in-kind donations, and restaurants are really hurting these days. But a lot of them want to engage with the chamber, with the nonprofits, with other ones. So even though most events have been completely canceled, we still have the occasional small ones. And some of our restaurants say, can I provide food instead of paying dues? And so we'll do that, and we'll put a sign up that food is provided by this one and that one. And that has come from them. It's like, I still want to be part of this, but I don't have any money right now. And that's and that shows that you just got to think a little differently, and you can find ways to support each other and help both organizations.
That's great. Dennis wants to make a quick comment, so if we can bring him up, he's got some thoughts. And I would say, while we bring Dennis up, one thing that I just want to throw out there is that as nonprofits, when we do have the budget, so that restaurant example that you gave, I know a nonprofit in Boulder that for their event, they were able to purchase food from some of their sponsors during this time because they had a budget for it, and give back to the businesses that they've been partnering with. It's about, again, that idea of making sure your donors and your board members and your volunteers know what organizations are supporting you, so that when they're making choices about where they're going to spend their dollars, that they're, and I think that was something that I always appreciated in talking to donors, is they were like, well, what restaurant should I be going to? Who donated to the event? And that ability to then, for them to go to that restaurant and say, I'm here because you support an organization that I care about. I think that's a really important responsibility that nonprofits have, is that it needs to be around when we can make that investment, that we're choosing to invest and to spend our dollars, because we do have dollars to spend, with those organizations that are partnering with us throughout the year. So Dennis, what were your thoughts?
Well, I would just say Sam does a great job with his membership in the restaurants in terms of keeping them top of mind, just in reference to your comment, Lisa. But in reference to Kim and Bonnie's point, we do something that turned out to be a really interesting exercise. So we have a community grants initiative through Elevations Foundation, and we do a annual reception. And what that ended up turning out to be was all these nonprofits were in the same room, maybe 15 or 20 of them, and they ended up, we ended up just So we convened this event, and then all of a sudden they were talking to each other. And that ended up being the value proposition, was them getting to know each other. So kind of being a convener, if you will, or bringing all bringing your partners, your nonprofit partners together. And we were stunned at the comments that were made about the value of that reception. So obviously it wasn't some snacks and a check presentation. It was these folks ended up building relationships that were where they're able to leverage with each other. So I love the idea of being a convener. That's all. Thank you, Bonnie.
That's awesome, Dennis. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to, one of the things that we're talking about are, and again, I think these are all great ideas of different ways that we can leverage those resources and redefining what does it mean to actually support one another from the for-profit and the nonprofit side. One of the things that I think I'd love to hear from you all is, how do we inform each other what we need? So from the business perspective, how do businesses, what are some effective ways that you kind of set, here are our goals? How do you communicate that? I mean, Dennis mentioned he's got that 100-point kind of criteria. Bonnie and others, I'd love to hear from you. Like, how do you let the community know what things you want to have an impact on?
Yeah, Lisa. So most banks and most, I don't want to say large, but at least mid-sized companies have a pretty clear mission statement with surrounding their community engagement and giving strategies, and that's available on websites. So that's where I would start. But more important than that is the relationship, to me anyway, having that leader reach out and say, I'd love to sit down and get to know me better so that I can get to know them better. Because that's, for me, that's where it starts. And you know what, COVID's making it difficult right now, but can still be done. I'm still comfortable with having a cup of coffee with somebody from a safe distance.
Awesome. And I love that you brought up that relationship piece, right? Because as you all have mentioned, you might be getting 40 or 50 of these requests a month, right? And there's lots. I mean, I think the beautiful thing about the place that we live is there's such a rich and diverse nonprofit community. There's so many good causes being promoted and out there doing the work. And so as a business owner, you're getting lots and lots of requests. So having a clear, I think from the business perspective, having a clear idea of what are the things that you're looking for, whether it be your values, the areas of impact that you want to have, what your employees want you to be engaged with, and having some conversations about that, whether that be organizationally wide or that, there's a couple of key decision makers that are deciding how you're going to spend those dollars, either people resources or monetary resources, and having that sort of declared so that you can help to engage with the organizations that are going to achieve those things that you've set out. Other panelists' thoughts around like how that gets communicated, or what or effective ways to say this is what we need and this is how we can help.
The one thing I would add, Lisa, is here at Good Samaritan, what we did is we put together an annual plan and identified one local group that we wanted to work with, a local not-for-profit, because healthcare workers, they love to give back, right? And it's what they do every single day. But without clear guidance or some direction as far as who they should support and who they could support, it became a bit of a shotgun approach. And so what we did is we plugged in with a local group and then aligned with their drives and initiatives that they were doing on a quarterly basis. And it really helped, and it provided that clarity. And it helped us message it at the beginning of every year. And our fiscal year is a calendar year, so it makes it really simple for people who aren't very smart like me. But so it really helped us in order to say, here's a group that is aligned with our vision, aligned with what we're trying to do, is a local group, and they have these annual drives or quarterly drives, and help us support. You don't have to if you don't want to, but we found that that clarity. And it's a really simple blocking and tackling, right? And it really helped us even throughout the COVID. And as you guys know, healthcare has been an interesting 2020 for healthcare workers, but it's been really a good step. And we plan on doing this all the way, for 2021 and 2022.
I love it because it becomes strategic, right? And then that impact is even greater because you've thought it through, and all those components that it becomes more powerful in that way. Kim, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, for me, the communication piece is the most important part of an effective partnership. Many of us on nonprofits or for-profit side have been in the radio silence kind of arena from one time to another where something hasn't worked out on either end. So really being able, I think a component of partnerships that people don't follow through with enough is kind of constant check-ins and communication. I know it's hard because everybody's busy, but instead of saying, okay, we're setting up this partnership and then we'll look at it at the end, that is to me kind of a disaster waiting to happen. Instead of saying, let's have monthly calls and say, okay, here were our goals. Where are we? What's working? What's not working? If your employee came and volunteered and they had a bad experience, we want to know about that right away so we can address those issues. And we don't want, a partnership to end with a bad taste in anyone's mouth. So, I call it, speaking your truth, of being able to really have hard conversations of, this may not work next year. This just kind of wasn't aligned with what we thought, and we're going to go in a different direction. As a nonprofit, I like to know if you're not going to come back to me next year, because I have to plan every year of what's going on. So being able to have those tough conversations helps me plan for the success of the organization, even if we're not in it together. So, I cannot overemphasize the communication on both ends of saying, let's have these set meetings where we just check in, see what's working, see what's not working, how can we adjust and course correct during the partnership itself.
That's a great point, Kim. And I think what comes up for me around that is about those reasonable expectations. How do we set up the reasonable expectations for both sides? And even as we talked about like things outside of money, I think it's also important for the nonprofit to have clarity of what would really help them, right? Because as nonprofits, we've all received, whether it be, a supply drive or a company that wants to come in and they have a group of employees, they want to all come in and do something. We have to make sure that it's actually meeting a need, that we're not creating more work. There's always that engagement piece, which is fantastic, but, to just make sure that there's reasonable expectations on both sides, so that the nonprofit is getting something that will really impact their work and allow them to do, and then for-profit is it's reasonable to ask them for what the request is. So what are some ways that when I say the word reasonable expectations, and I love the fact, Kim, that you brought up the communication piece, how do we make sure that we're being reasonable with one another? Like what are, when we're setting these up, what are some things that you think are important for that? And I'd love to hear some comments from our attendees. Like when you think about reasonable expectations, what's important for you to communicate to one another? So I'm thinking of things like, how much time is it going to take, right? What are the expectations in terms of having, where is the brand going to appear? How often? What is it, as you said, what are those meetings going to be? Dennis says an MOI is not out of the question. I love that. So just having it written down, a written agreement around what it's going to be. At the Humane Society, we had sponsorship contracts that said, here are all the things that we're going to do. Here's what we expect from you. And it was agreed upon in writing, and it gave us something to go back to. Other thoughts that folks have or comments love to see, like how do you set up those reasonable expectations? What sets that up for success? Communication, MOU, getting those agreements up front, constant communication. Anything else strike you?
Well, I would say too, how can the staff from both organizations kind of cross and help each other out? So, because as a nonprofit, you have to be we're very conscientious of how many staff we have. And so if it's a big project, we don't want to say no because we know it'll have a great outcome. But instead of saying yes and then stressing our staff out with, oh my gosh, what do you mean? Now we have to work every night for the next 2 months and work during the days, is really saying, hey, we would love to do this, but go into MOIs or MOUs with a negotiation mind of saying, we would love this. Now, do you have ambassadors on your side who would help cover this kind of aspect of the partnership for us, because we don't have the staff power to do it? So really being upfront, because I know as nonprofits, we are super accommodating and sometimes to a fault. So really being standing up and really saying what we can and cannot do. So because we want to over deliver on whatever we say. So we want you to walk out feeling great. And so knowing that it's okay to have those conversations, that this is going to be really tight and we could use some help in actually implementing this partnership.
The power of saying no, and then defining what can you say yes to, right? Because I think you brought up a really important point. At the end of the day, you want this to be a good experience, both for the nonprofit and the for-profit. And if that spirals, then you've lost the benefit. So again, it's about really getting clear on, what will actually help us. And if someone has a great idea, okay, what, as you said, are there champions? Are there ways, is this something that the for-profit can do and just deliver, or getting all that out up front is really great. And Marianna said, would anyone be willing to share some sample MOU or sponsorship contracts with the group? So if you have those, Sam, is there a way that we can share that with everyone? Is there an email that they could send it to you and then make it available?
Sorry, I was answering a question in an email from one of the panelists and I got distracted. Or not one of the panelists, one of the members. I won't call them out on that though. What was that question? I apologize.
So the question was, if we wanted to share, if folks had sponsorship contracts or MOU examples that they wanted to share, is there a way for us to create that opportunity?
Yeah, if they want to send it to me, sam.taylor@Broomfield Chamber, let me know that it's okay and who to share it with. We're all about making connections and sharing things, but not if somebody really doesn't. There might be a bank that doesn't want their contract shared that another bank might find out, or same with insurance, or same for nonprofits. We're always willing to share everything as long as everybody's aboard.
Awesome. So Sam, if you want to put your email in the chat so everyone has it, and if you're interested in, if you have something to share, send it to Sam, and if you're interested in getting it, then I would send him an email and say, if you get some examples, let me know, so he doesn't have to just do a massive sharing with everyone for those that don't have one already.
Yeah, and I'll send it out to the whole group if it works and fits in with that.
Great. All right, so we've talked about reasonable expectations. We've talked about, kind of what the benefits are. We've had some ideas around different ways that we could, partner with one another. What are some of the obstacles to partnerships? What are some, when you think about those partnerships that haven't worked as well on the for-profit or nonprofit things, what are things that we want to learn from? Because we're going to make mistakes. We're going to, not everything's going to be flawless. So what are the lessons that you've learned, and what are some things that have gotten in the way? I'd love to hear from either for-profits or nonprofits to just make sure we know who you are. So in comments, just say nonprofit or for-profit or anyone in the panelists. What hasn't worked well? What's something that you're like, oh, never again?
Well, I would say this isn't something that I would say never again, but one of the biggest obstacles is changing of staff members and nobody knowing on both sides. Yeah. So, hey, I'm working with Bonnie. I've been working with Bonnie for 2 years, and all of a sudden Bonnie's gone and I have no idea who I should talk to, or, so that transition of, hey, I'm not going to be here anymore, but here's a contact. And same thing on the nonprofit side. If you've been working with somebody for years and years, and then all of a sudden they're gone, if it's not you yourself, having a plan in place for the organization to let your nonprofit partners and for-profit partners know that there's been a transition happening, because there's nothing more frustrating than all of a sudden hitting a wall that you've spent years and years trying to knock down.
You're getting a lot of yeses, Kim. I think that resonates. So I think that's a really, really good one. It's that continuity, right? And that it's a relationship. I think another question was getting started, who is interested, how to connect with for-profits, that can be an obstacle. And I think about Bonnie's comment around just building those relationships, right? And Kim, that's exactly what you hit on. When that relationship is changed, that we need to have that transition, that can be an obstacle because all of that work and knowledge and collaboration needs to be moved forward. What are some other things that you've learned along the way that you would do differently the next time?
I think
Lisa,
if I could just I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this isn't necessarily an outright failure, but an opportunity to do better. I think that really resonated with what Kim said earlier, is having a communication plan and perhaps the being more intentional about the regular check-ins. I know for myself, I have every good intention of checking in with sponsors, 2 to 3 times a year, and you get busy and it just might not happen. And so what I'm going to take away from this meeting is, maybe having set days out of the month that I'm just doing partner outreach to check in, let them know what's new and things that might be of interest to them. So I think that's a really important point. And if we can all take just one thing away from this session, it's just how can we be more intentional with our partnerships?
That's a great point. Shannon says unrealistic evaluation or reporting that doesn't match what the nonprofit is doing. That's a great point. Cindy says stewardship reports which require so much detail that we end up spending more time to assemble than the value of the grant. Yeah, so again, it's about what I love about both of those is that idea of setting those expectations from the onset of the partnership so that we're really clear. And Marianna, what came up for me as you said that is I often remember times where we had promised a bunch of stuff to a sponsor and didn't assign a point person on the nonprofit side to actually deliver those. And all of a sudden it was like, oh no, we didn't do the 5 things that were in that. So making sure there's clarity on the nonprofit side of who's going to deliver what we said we were going to do for the sponsorship. Just having, not making assumptions that someone's going to take care of that and make sure their logo's on the thing or that they get their benefits or that we do that outreach. So having people specifically assigned. What are some other lessons that you all have learned? Anything else?
Lisa, I guess I would add, just honesty and clarity. So that communication that Marianna was talking about it's a two-way street. And if there was something that I was disappointed in, I need to communicate that as a for-profit. That's just going to build the relationship. So that can, sometimes it's difficult to deliver, but I think it's important that communication stays open both ways.
Yep.
And if I can add to that, I think the pandemic's been a real harsh reminder of how fluid these situations are, and what may have been realistic a year ago is not realistic now. And so I think that even if we have the best of intentions, as Marianna said, and set out to recognize the holistic nature of what we can offer one another from the get-go, this year has been a great reminder of the fact that changes. It changes in terms of volunteer protocols, the ability to fundraise, hosting events, even personnel changes, as Kim alluded to, having your contact disappear and having that throw a wrench in your plans as it relates to funding for the upcoming year, for example. It works both ways. And sometimes the assets that a nonprofit has in terms of their board, for example, can change suddenly and they might find themselves in need, whereas earlier they weren't. So I think that, again, just to reinforce that need for communication, and as Marianna said, I'm guilty of not being as intentional about that as everyone else is, but it's a really important point.
And I think you brought up a really great point around COVID right now. We're all in this together, right? So our for-profit partners are experiencing the same things. We can learn from one another. We think again about what are the ways that we can partner to just rely on the leadership from both nonprofits to help us think through and just have that grace to understand that we are constantly having to be agile and resilient and pivot and we can learn from one another, that we're all experiencing similar things. We're all organizations that employ people, that care about our people, that care about our community. And so how do we help each other through that? So, Rachel said a challenge is, not always knowing, if things change, learning to pivot really quickly. One-time partnerships, relationships need to grow together. They just get better. So great point. Any other lessons before we move on to evaluation? I think these are all really, really good. And again, it goes back to that communication piece. It is, these are not black and white, one size fits all. I think that was very much how it used to be, right? You had events and you had sponsors and it was this and that. And now the beautiful thing is it can be so much more than that. We're talking about something that is so integrated and that there's benefits that are stacked upon each other. So they're more complex and they take a little more stewardship and they take a little more cultivation and really getting that clarity. So the things that we heard are, really being clear up front on what those expectations are going to be, understanding where you aligned in your values, all of those things. And then, that constant communication and making sure that you're pivoting when you need to, that you're keeping each other in the loop. Blair just said, I love this, being authentic and truly grateful for every partnership. So it goes so far, so no matter how big or small they may feel, right? So whether they're giving you just 1 hour of their time or a $500 check, or they're giving you a $10,000 check and they're on your board or vice versa, that we're really taking the time to say thank you and to report back, which is what we're going to talk about next, evaluation. So let our partners on both sides know what has the impact been, right? If we don't have time to do this, then we shouldn't be in these partnerships, because that's a really important point. So when we think about open communication and what are some of the tools what have you seen work well? So Kim, you mentioned like having those meetings kind of set. Marianna, you mentioned like having a day that you're going to do those check-ins. What are some other things that have worked for you on either side, the for-profit or the nonprofit side, that have really helped to make that communication solid? Bonnie, you mentioned going to coffee, just checking in, making sure those relationships are strong.
Yeah, so having a point person really it doesn't necessarily have to be the executive director, but having somebody that you can reach out to and you're going to get a very honest, very upfront response from them, so that you can depend on it. I think the other way around, if I'm in the nonprofit seat, I want a champion on the for-profit side, somebody that is passionate about the mission and can help drive that internally.
Yep.
And I would say one of the things that, for me, the pandemic and the way we do business changing, one of the great things is the ability to have these SharePoint and Google documents that people are more familiar with. A place in which partners on either side can put down observations and not have to wait to that next meeting. Because that's the other thing, is sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I need to remember to tell Bonnie about this before, because this didn't really work. And having someplace maybe that anybody can put in input. And then when you're having those meetings, you can address some of those instead of trying to remember. It's, how many of us at the end of a event or sponsorship or partnership is like, all right, let's get together and see what worked. And we're like, oh, we can't remember everything. But being able to have that technology now where we can actually just share real-time information and address it later.
So Shannon's asking say a little bit more about those resources technology-wise. So Google Documents, like what are some of the tools that you?
Yeah, so Google Docs is probably the most familiar in terms of it's, you can actually have a folder that you can share with people within your organization as well as externally. So it's a permission-based document, and SharePoint is the same thing. It's based out of a Microsoft kind of, so if you use Microsoft Office, and a lot of people use now Microsoft 365, which is a cloud-based technology, and there they have these abilities, because before it's like in-house or out of house, and now you have this capability to merge the two and say, I'm going to have a folder specifically that I'm going to share with my partnership point of contact for this partnership we're doing or this sponsorship. So it's not open to everybody, but you can share it with whomever you'd love to. And it's just a great tool for both for-profits and nonprofits to use when they're trying to keep those communication lines open.
I love it. And I want to start talking about evaluation. And you brought up that like debriefing that we often do at the end of a partnership. And that can be an important part of evaluating. And I'm curious, like, what has worked well? Or what are again, going back to when we're really clear on what our benefits are going to be, and we're aligned in the impact that we want to have, we're doing good communication, we're checking in, it's evolving as we go, we're pivoting as need be, we've got that, we've got those tools in place. When we're looking back and saying what worked, what are some things from the for-profit side that you really use to evaluate? And obviously there's going to be some things that are part of those agreements, whether it be, we reached this many people through your website, or we, we did these many engagement opportunities. But what are some specific things, and how do you establish from the get-go what you're going to evaluate? And Pete, I'd love to hear from you specifically around the program that you talked about, because you did all that planning. Like what did you learn in terms of evaluating the success for that?
The thing we learned is twofold. Is one, you got to have flexibility, right? The best plan may not actually come out and really be what you need it to be, or want it to be what you anticipated when you started it. But I think there's a point also, Lisa, that you brought up earlier around grace, and really to make these partnerships work, you've got to give each other a little bit of grace. And it gets back to my point, who knew what 2020 was going to look like? And if you had a really solid plan, and one where there was alignment and engagement at the outset, and things happen, and that's okay. And just have that dialogue, have the discussion. And if you have to change course halfway through, so be it, right? And I think if that's anything 2020 has taught us, is let's give everybody a little bit of grace as we work through this.
That is a really good point. Thank you, Pete. Other things that you all have learned in evaluating, one of the things that comes up for me is that, and I think you mentioned this before, Kim, that constant communication throughout, that at the end of it, if we decide, gosh, that didn't work, then what do we want to do next time? How are we going to apply the lessons that we learned from that partnership? Because again, we can have plans, and we can have an execution, and then being able to say, okay, what worked? What would we tweak next time? To somebody's point, not just having it be a one-year partnership, but that we have a chance to build on that, and to, again, if we've been doing the right things and building that relationship and cultivating that communication, there is that opportunity to have it evolve and to build on the success and to learn from the things that didn't go as well. What are other things that either from the for-profits or nonprofits that are important to you around evaluating the impact of a partnership? And in the chat, feel free to chime in. Any other thoughts from our panelists, things that are coming up for you?
I would say I would add the understanding your audience. So I may be the champion, but the evaluation piece may be done by our marketing group. So understanding who you're writing that to, because, if I'm going to support you, if I'm going to champion it, I'm probably not as concerned about the actual numbers behind the event, but our marketing guys are, right? And at some point in the future, as that relationship grows, you get to a point where there are more folks involved in the decision as to whether to continue the support or not. So just understanding the audience.
It's a really great point, Bonnie. And somebody put in the chat, Brianna said specific metrics, right? So for your marketing team, specific metrics are going to be really important. For someone else, they just need to know that it happened, right? So again, getting clarity from the beginning of what are you going to hold me accountable to on both sides of the partnership? And from the nonprofit side too, like, well, how are we measuring the success, right? What was that level of engagement? Some of those specific metrics that we may have from the nonprofit side. But again, having clarity from the beginning about what those are, I think, is really important. And knowing your audience is fantastic. I mean, there's definitely been partnerships that I've been there, like, I don't care what happens. I just want to know that, that puppies and kittens are going to get helped. Okay, great. That makes it really easy. And for someone else, it might be, I want to know that you helped me engage this sector of our community and brought awareness back to Dennis's point of like, how do I help my business partner and what's the benefit to them? So other thoughts in the just type in the chat, things that you use for evaluation.
Yeah, and I would also think, I love the clarity point up front so that if there are unrealistic expectations that we can address those up front, but also thinking of those kind of metrics that may not be, just in your face in terms of maybe one of our goals is to see how much employee engagement we get. So a goal might be that we want 40% of our employees to engage with the organization over a year at some point. Now, those are things that nonprofits can track and may be something that's really helpful in forming new goals for the next year. So thinking also to Marianna's point of thinking outside the box of what metrics over, how many people did you feed? How many people got school supplies? Of really thinking more holistically about what are evaluation metrics that are not normally put out there.
Yep, I love that with that word holistic, right? Because it is about the health of our organizations and our community, and there's things that are going to impact that we might not think of in our normal monthly reports. All right, I'd love to open it up to general questions from either side, or thoughts that you're having, things that are coming up. What are some questions from our attendees that we haven't covered that you're curious about? Give everyone a moment. Anyone on the panel has any specific? Otherwise, I'd like to invite you to start typing in, what is one thing you're taking away? What's one thing that you weren't thinking about before that you are now? How do we get connected to interested for-profits? So Susan's asking, how do we start that connection? Bonnie, you mentioned those relationship buildings. We've talked about being able to check out websites of, if there's a partner that you're looking, both on the for-profit and nonprofit side, getting a sense of who they are and what's the impact they have, and that there are some nonprofits or for-profits that'll have that right on their website. What are other ways that you have successfully started these partnerships?
A lot of it for me comes back to passion. So I'll reach out to start a relationship with something that I'm passionate about, or that I see. For me, it's if I see a nonprofit in a community that's highly effective, that's engaging. That's just, man, they're just so good at what they do that I want to be a part of that. So one of the other things I would ask of the participants would be, as a nonprofit committee member, I'd love to know what other topics would they like us to explore how else can we help them as a committee? Great.
Marianna, you mentioned that the Chamber and the Broomfield Community Foundation are co-presenting a speed networking recruitment. You want to tell the attendees about that?
Yes, I would love to. I was trying to figure out how to attach a graphic, but I couldn't. So I will
just do jazz hands.
This gets blasted out to the attendees today. But last year we did a really cool in-person event at Partners Group. And obviously we can't do the same this year in person. So we're going to attempt to do a speed networking event virtually, and it will be December 2nd, and with the purpose of familiarizing just community volunteers and interested individuals who have thought about getting involved either as a volunteer or board member. I'm encouraging our partner corporate partners to share with their associates and their employees to get plugged into the nonprofits. And so this is really a networking opportunity where the nonprofits can share about themselves and what they are looking for right now. And the attendees can share, what their interests are as well. So I will make sure that the chamber blasts this out and that the foundation blasts this out to the attendees, but it will be December 2nd, and we're excited about it, and I really hope it can work just as well virtually as it did last year in person.
That's awesome. So as Bonnie said, we'd love to hear your comments in the chat about other topics. I'm just going to read some of these takeaways. So Fred says, remain focused on the evaluation and using it continually to develop the partnership in a mutually beneficial way. Marianna said, for skilled volunteers or prospective board members, maybe a good way to open the door to new relationships. Passion and mission alignment is so important. I know it was stated at the start, but that said, can the panelists information be shared, names, company, nonprofit? That was a request. Cross organizational engagement is so important. Your story about telling me, Ben, your story telling the abilities of the SRB work is incredibly impactful. And Bonnie, I love the way you step in action and business supporting our community. A true Broomfield asset, all of you, great. Love of the use of the word impact. What is the impact that each partner wants? So any other takeaways or things that, like that one nugget, I think it's always important, like we go to all of these things, I want you to think of one thing that you're gonna put in place as you go forward. Brian says, I'm taking away the effectiveness of the partnership is often about how passionate you are about the goal of the nonprofit. Also, how can my company's marketing department help? Great. Any other actions that you want to take as a result of today or something that you're taking away? These are all fantastic.
I love Marianna's statement about being really intentional. Because we all have the greatest of intentions, but being intentional is a different aspect. So really saying, okay, we're going to incorporate this as part of the structure of the partnership.
Yep, great. Think holistically and communicate. And then Marianna put the link in, so you have that. Have more intention now to become a nonprofit. Awesome. All right, any other last minute questions or thoughts? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Sam to wrap up. Oh, give each other grace. That was what Lori said. Excellent, Sam. Well, thank you all. I think this is I learned a lot, and I appreciate everyone's input, and I love how interactive you all were, because I know sometimes in this environment it can be hard, but everyone, I think it was a rich conversation. Thanks to all of you, everything that you brought to this. So, Sam, I'll turn it over to you to wrap us up.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. This was fantastic. I really appreciate your leadership on this. You did a great job. One thing I would say to the nonprofits when they're trying to do a relationship, if you want a one-word answer, ask. Ask what the partnership could look like. What would you like to see? The tin cup doesn't work anymore. It's got to be a two-way street. So ask. The worst that's going to happen is they say no. And then you're no worse off. But then you might get a good dialogue. So that's what it is. So I do want to thank everybody that attended. Thank you so much. Especially I want to thank our sponsors, SCL Health, Sunflower Bank, First Western Trust, BSC Signs, Source Communications, and of course, the Broomfield Community Foundation. And a special thank you to the nonprofit committee that the Chamber has put together. They're the ones that drove this whole thing, with Kurt as their leader, as the chair of this. You guys have done a phenomenal job. I really appreciate it. There's always room for more nonprofits and for-profits to be on that committee to do more of this work. And speaking of more of this work, we want to know what went right, what you would have liked to have seen. If there is interest, we'll make this a series on how to get together. As Marianna said, we're going to do a board networking match to try and get people. And for those of you with the for-profits, it's not scary. Nobody's going to say, sign up for my board right now. It's just a way, what does this mean? For a way for you to check it out. So I encourage you all to sign up. And again, we will be sending out a survey with questions on what was good. It'll be very short, we promise. But it'll just be what can we do better, what worked and what didn't work. So again, on behalf of the Broomfield Chamber and the Community Foundation, thank you very much for attending. I hope you have a wonderful day. It's beautiful out there. Go forth safely. Thank you very much.
Sam, if I can, before we all sign off, I just want to thank again the Broomfield Enterprise for being our webinar sponsor. Their name's not up there on the little graphic, but they have sponsored all of our webinars throughout the year. So thank you to the Enterprise for their participation as well.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Enterprise, and everyone else. Take care.